Hi, my name is Mandy and today we're going to be talking about my biggest surprises and my biggest disappointments of the year. The books that I have on these lists are not necessarily my least favorite books of the year or my favorite books of the year. They're the ones that I was either expecting a lot out of or that I wasn't expecting much out of, and they surprised me either way. We're going to start out talking about the biggest disappointments, that way we can start on a low note and end on a high note. I have actually ordered these. In the case of the disappointments, I've ordered them from the least disappointing to the most disappointing, even though they were all disappointing. And then on the surprises side, I have labeled them from the least surprising to the most surprising, even though they were all surprising. First up on my list of disappointments was Unhooked by Lisa Maxwell. This was supposed to be a Peter Pan retelling, and I'm a sucker for Peter Pan retellings. I don't know why I'm kind of a glutton for punishment with these, because I have really high expectations for Peter Pan retellings, and only like one or two of them that I've read have actually lived up to the expectations that I put on them. But either way, this one just did not live up to the magic of the original Peter Pan story. When I think of Peter Pan, I think of magic, but also sadness, because Peter Pan really is one of the saddest books out there. I mean, on the surface, it doesn't seem like it should be that sad, but down below, you've got a guy who refuses to grow up. I mean, maybe growing up isn't the most fun, but it's a lot better than the alternative. This book was about a girl who was kidnapped by shadow monsters and ends up in Neverland, but it is not your mother's Neverland. Peter is a villain, which is not a new concept. I've seen a few adaptations in the last few years where Peter becomes the villain, and Hook was the hero. But ultimately, while the book was not terrible, it just lacked a lot of the magic and innocence that I have come to expect from a Peter Pan story. Even if it's fake innocence, I feel like it has to have some layer of innocence somewhere in there. My next disappointment was This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. I had a lot of expectations going into this book because Victoria Schwab is really loved on BookTube. I really don't need to say that because you're watching BookTube and you know. So I thought that I would pick up one of her young adult novels. This Savage Song is kind of a dystopian set in a world where violent acts create monsters. The more violent the act, the more sophisticated the monsters are. The city that this is set in is split in two, and our main girl is the daughter of the leader of one side of the city, and then the main guy is actually one of the monsters from the other side of the city. I don't remember much else about it because it just didn't live up to my expectations. I don't know exactly what it was about this book that I didn't love, but after I read it and I was looking at other people's thoughts on it, I just didn't get it. I wasn't quite sure why everyone raved about it, and it was not for me. Next on the disappointing list was Romanov by Nadine Brandis. This book was going around a lot when it was first released. There was a lot of promotion showing up on BookTube for it. I follow Nadine Brandis on Instagram, and I really like her on Instagram. She's funny, she's got great pictures, and I really wanted to like her book. Romanov was an Anastasia retelling with magic. When the Romanovs were sent to their final place of, I can't remember what the name of the place that they were sent to before they were executed, but when they were sent there, Anastasia was given charge of a Russian nesting doll which contained spells, and the spells were supposed to bloom until they became ripe enough to use and save them. And I'm all for throwing magic into history, and I've always been really fascinated with the Anastasia story ever since the Disney movie came out, even though that has nothing to do with her real life. So I was all for a new telling with magic. Without giving away the ending, it didn't really seem like there was a point to why this book was written and why this book existed. And so in the end, I just wasn't there for it. The next on my list of disappointments is actually 2 books written by different people but part of the same publishing marketing thing, if that makes sense. It was simultaneously Batman by Marie Lu and Wonder Woman by Leigh Bardugo. These are part of a group of stories published by different authors that were young adult retellings of Batman and Wonder Woman. They also have a Catwoman and a Superman one, but after these first 2, they were just so disappointing that I didn't feel a desire to continue on with this series. I love superheroes. It's probably not a surprise with how much I love Renegades. I love all the superhero movies that come out and I really like them. And I was excited that there were young adult retellings of some of my favorite superheroes. And I don't know if I can put my foot on exactly what I did not like about these books, but I didn't. And so they are disappointments. The last one on my list I know is one that a lot of people really liked. And it almost feels like a betrayal of my earlier self to not have liked this book. And actually, it's more of I was disappointed by the whole series rather than just the book, but the final book really disappointed me. And that is Queen of Air and Darkness by Cassandra Clare. Cassandra Clare was like my favorite author in my early college years. I loved the Mortal Instruments and I loved the Infernal Devices even more, and I was excited to pick up this new series from her. I had missed it when it first came out and I was able to read it after all the books had come out. This is the last book in the Dark Artifices trilogy, but it's part of the bigger Shadowhunter world by Cassandra Clare, and it's very difficult to read this book without having read the previous Mortal Instruments at least. Actually, there are characters from both series in this series, so it's really hard to read this series if you haven't read the other 2. While I did enjoy hearing what happened next to the world, this was a very vibrant and exciting world that she's created, and I became invested in what happens to this world in the Mortal Instruments. But the characters, I was not invested in at all. I did not like the Blackthorns, I did not like Emma, and I thought that they just spent the entire time whining. I only got into the book in like the last half when characters from the Mortal Instruments showed up and played a key role, and I said, yeah, I'm in for this because I know these characters and I actually like these characters, but anytime it was the new characters for this series, I didn't care. I mean, I ended up giving the book 3 stars, so it was not terrible, but the only thing that redeemed it was the other characters who showed up. I was honestly considering DNFing it. That was how disappointed I was. Now that I've ranted a little bit, let's go to some happy stuff. And instead of ranting, maybe I'll be gushing. First up on my list of surprises was Aurora Rising by Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I know that this book ended up on a lot of people's disappointment lists. It let a lot of people down who loved Illuminae, but for me, I actually DNF'd Illuminae earlier in this year. For various reasons, you can actually hear about that on my books I DNF'd in 2019 video. I'll link that down below. I just decided to give Aurora Rising a try. The tagline of the book was, "They're not the heroes we deserve, they're just the ones we could find." And that just sounded so fun and exciting that I decided to check it out. I was very surprised. I actually enjoyed it so much that I'm going to be giving Illuminae another chance. It's about this guy named Tyler who is at the top of Space Cadet program. He is like #1 in his class. He is ready to get first pick of everybody on graduation day when they get to choose their crews. He decides to go on a little joyride the day before the draft so that he can just get some nerves out and all of that, and he ends up answering a distress call of a ship that has been missing in hyperspace for like 300 years. He gets there and everyone is dead except for one person. He saves her, but there is a lot of mystery surrounding her. When he ends up getting back to the flight space cadet academy thing, it turns out that by saving her, he missed the draft. He is stuck with the bottom of the barrel, everyone that nobody wanted. That's where it comes in, the ones we could find. The writing style in this was so funny. Like, the characters were hilarious. There was one character who never really talked, and we got the different points of views of all the characters, and when it was her time for a chapter, we literally got like one sentence. I was surprised by that because I wasn't expecting much out of it. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it when everyone else was disappointed, because I didn't have high expectations for it in the first place. My next surprise of the year was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. I've said it before on this channel and I'll say it again. I don't like explicit sex scenes, and because of that I stick away from adult romances. When I first started hearing about The Unhoneymooners, it sounded really cute and I wished that I could read it, but I knew that being an adult romance, it most likely had sex in it. But then when I heard reviews of it, they mentioned that it was not very explicit, not like other Christina Lauren books, so I decided to give it a try and I'm so glad I did. It really makes me wish that I liked sex scenes, because I wish that I could read everything by Christina Lauren now. The Unhoneymooners is about a girl whose twin sister gets married, and everyone at the wedding except for her and the groom's brother get food poisoning, and someone has to take the vacation, so of course the main character does. She does not like the brother of the groom, they are enemies, but of course, going on an unhoneymoon in Hawaii, you're gonna fall in love. Next up, I was surprised by Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I did not have very high expectations of this. I found it at a thrift store for $1, so that's why I bought it, and I added it to my list of books that I wanted to read off my shelves. But I was kind of disappointed when I drew it from my TBR video, but I figured that I couldn't cheat and not read it, so I decided to check it out, and I was very, very pleasantly surprised. This book is about an orphan named Laszlo Strange, and they call him Strange the Dreamer because he's always got his head in books and he's never paying attention. He works at a library, and he is fascinated with the story of a city called Weep. Well, that wasn't its name originally. So 200 years before the start of the story, all convoys and trade parties from Weep suddenly stopped. And then when Laszlo was a child, the real name of the city was suddenly forgotten. All of a sudden, collectively, everybody could not remember the name and they just knew it as Weep. Well, when Laszlo is an adult, a convoy from Weep shows up and says they need everyone's help and asks for volunteers. Laszlo ends up on this convoy to help the city of Weep, and that's all I'll say without throwing in spoilers. I was not expecting to like this book. I was not expecting to want to read the next book, but I do. And I think I need to give the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy another try and read it when I'm not pregnant and hormonal. My next surprise was A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. I read this one after I read This Savage Song, and I was not expecting much. I just figured I would give Victoria Schwab another try, and I am so glad that I did. I enjoyed that book so much. I didn't enjoy the second one as much, and I still need to read the third, but overall, very great book. This book is about a world where there are 4 different Londons, and these 4 different Londons kind of exist in different dimensions, and no one can travel through to the different Londons except for Kel and a couple of others. So Kel works for the king and queen, and he travels as an ambassador back and forth between the Londons. You've got Grey London, and Grey London is our world. Red London is where Kel is from, White London, and then you've got Black London, which they no longer exists. Black London is closed off, no one can get to it, And one day Kel comes across an artifact from Black London, which should not exist anymore. The artifacts were supposed to have been destroyed, and we'll leave it at that. It was such a great magic system. It was such a great idea. The writing was great, and I really liked the characters were really nice and snarky, and I love some snark in my characters. And my biggest surprise of the year was With Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedo. This was the first book that I gave 5 stars to this year, and I read it in May. I was very stingy with my ratings in the first half of the year. This is the one that really made my love for reading real again. It's about a girl named Imani who is a teen mom. She is in her senior year of high school and she loves to cook. The only problem is, with being a teen mom, she has a lot of responsibility and she doesn't think that her dream of being a chef can happen because of all of her responsibilities. So the book is really about her learning how she can be her own person while battling with this label that she has of being a teen mom. Most stories that deal with like teen pregnancy deal with the pregnancy themselves and the decision that the mother has to have when she finds out that she's pregnant. And this book dealt with the aftermath of deciding to keep the baby, which I found really refreshing. And the thing that surprised me the most about this book was how much I could relate to it. I mean, I'm a mom, but I'm not a teen mom, and I didn't expect to relate so much to a story about a teen mom, but I could. All the feelings that she had for her daughter and her insecurities, I felt them too. And I loved that, and I loved this book. It was definitely my biggest surprise of the year. So there you have it. Were you surprised by anything that I was surprised by? Were you disappointed by my disappointments? Were you disappointed by my surprise? Were you surprised by my disappointments? Let me know what some of your surprises and disappointments of the year were. I can't believe this year is almost over. It's insane. We're entering a new decade. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you liked what you saw, feel free to click subscribe. You can also follow me on my social media, which I will link down below. I hope you're having a great bookish holiday. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next time. Bye!